In the previous episode, you heard a declaration was made, and it was no small thing. He is about to speak. The one who has watched every transaction, heard every refrain, counted every generation, and has itemized every receipt for over 400 years, is about to speak. And when he speaks, he first speaks to the ones that should know better, the ones that have professed to the masses that they act on behalf of the true and living God, and as such they can be found in the sanctuary, as it is the place where God's will is to be received. So the question we will need to find an answer for, is that true? And when he speaks, and make no mistake, he will speak. Ezekiel chapter 9 tells us exactly where that conversation begins, not in the street, not in the courthouse, not in the precinct, but in the sanctuary, the place where the text was kept, the place where the people came to hear the will of God. Are you hearing this? The judgment does not begin with the ones who never claimed to know better. It begins with the ones who did. We know what the church should be, but we also know that the devil sits in the front row every Sunday. Men in robes who read the same Bible you have read, then picked up a pen and told the kings of Europe that slavery was legal, slavery was holy, and that it was God's will to go to Africa and take his people. Has it ever occurred to you how sinister that was? They used the same book that was meant to make you free, to also put your ancestors in chains. Those men had names, and what they signed had names. In 1452, a pope named Nicholas V put his seal on a document called Dum Diversas, and in plain language it told the king of Portugal that he had God's permission to invade, to conquer, and to reduce the people of Africa to perpetual slavery. Not a suggestion, not a guideline, a papal order, signed, sealed, delivered, and Nicholas V was not the last. 3 years later, he signed it again, Romanus Pontifex, 1455. Then Pope Calixtus III confirmed it in 1456. Pope Sixtus IV confirmed it in 1481. Pope Leo X confirmed it in 1514. 5 popes, 5 signatures, across 62 years. The sanctuary did not drift into this by accident. They erected a slaughterhouse, not a temple. Listen to this. The doctrine of discovery was the name of the policy they built. The legal and theological framework that told every European king that any land not already claimed by a Christian ruler was available for the taking, and any people living on it were available for the taking with it. That doctrine did not die with the popes who wrote it. It ran on its own. It became the foundation of colonial law. It became the foundation of American property law, and it is still on the books in the United States Supreme Court, which cited it as recently as 2005. This is the knowledge transfer the Book of Enoch warned about. The watchers did not stay to watch what they started. They were gone. But what they taught ran on its own. 5 popes signed the orders, and they are all dead. But the doctrine they built is still being cited in American courtrooms. Are you seeing this? The sanctuary did not just bless the trade. It wrote the legal architecture that the trade ran on, and that architecture outlived every man who built it by 500 years. And then, 574 years after Nicholas V picked up that pen, on May 25, 2026, a pope named Leo XIV stood in the Vatican and said 3 words that no pope before him had ever said. For this, in the name of the Church, I sincerely ask for pardon. Remember we said, he is clearing his throat. This is what that sounds like. But do not let the magnitude of that moment cause you to miss what the apology actually said. Read it carefully. This constitutes a wound in Christian memory. Not a wound in the bodies of the people the trade was conducted against. Not a wound in the generations whose lineage was broken by the institution's blessing. A wound in Christian memory. The institution's memory of itself. Are you hearing this? The grammar of the apology tells you everything. The church is describing its own pain, while the people who carried the actual wound for 400 years are not even the subject of the sentence. And the apology did not come with the receipts. The Vatican holds the most comprehensive surviving documentation of the early trade, the papal letters, the financial records of the religious orders that held captives, the baptismal registries of the slave ships, the official church reports from the colonies. Most of it is still sealed. Think of it. You can apologize for what is in those documents while keeping the documents locked. That is not reckoning. That is Public Relations Management 101. And the apology did not come with the land. The church still owns it. The Jesuit order, whose priests rode on the same ships that carried your ancestors in chains, still has the wealth those chains built. And meanwhile, Georgetown University, one of the most prestigious schools in America, was saved from going broke in 1838 by selling 272 enslaved people, 272 human beings, sold like furniture to keep the lights on. That money has been growing for nearly 2 centuries. The apology did not touch a single dollar of it. Is this sinking in yet? We have an historic apology, and it is historic. We are not dismissing it. That names a wound in the institution's memory, leaves the receipts sealed, leaves the land in the institution's possession, and leaves the compounded wealth untouched. Meanwhile, the doctrine of discovery that 5 popes built is still being cited in American courtrooms. Are you feeling the weight of this? The sanctuary spoke out loud, but when it comes to settling a debt, money talks louder. And the church was not alone in this sanctuary, because while the Vatican was signing papal bulls, the kings of Europe were building empires on the same foundation. And when those empires became nations, Britain, France, Portugal, Spain, and eventually the United States of America, they brought the architecture with them. Different uniforms, different institutions, different centuries, but the same doctrine of discovery running underneath all of it. Is this making sense now? The slaughterhouse did not stay in Rome. It went viral. Well, imagine this for a moment. 2 symbolic gestures within the same week, only 3 days after the Vatican asked for pardon. On May 28, 2026, the French National Assembly voted 254 to nothing to repeal a law called the Code Noir, the Black Code, a royal decree signed by King Louis XIV in 1685 that classified enslaved black people as property. Think of it, yet another version of the less than doctrine still on the books, and it governed every aspect of their subjugation across France's colonies. This is no joke. That law had never been formally removed from French law, not in 1848 when France abolished slavery, nor in the century and a half that followed. It was still on the books in 2026. Why? Just in case full-on slavery makes a comeback. It absolutely makes no sense at all. And France's president stood up and said the Code Noir should never have survived the abolition of slavery, that the silence France had maintained toward it for nearly 2 centuries had become, and these are his words, a form of offense. And then he stopped. No apology, no reparations, no restitution. The wealth that was built on the backs of the 1.4 million Africans France shipped to its colonies, the sugar wealth that built the French cities of Nantes and Bordeaux, untouched. The same week the Vatican apologized and kept the archives sealed. The same week France repealed and kept the wealth. 2 gestures filled with meaningless, empty words. 0 calls to action equals 2 more receipts itemized. And America built the most sophisticated version of the sanctuary the world had ever seen. Not a building in Rome, a constitution, a declaration, a set of documents that said all men are created equal, written by men who owned other men while the ink was still wet. Has it ever occurred to you that the Declaration of Independence and the doctrine of discovery were operating at the same time, in the same country, by the same hands? Think about it. The sanctuary did not just cross the Atlantic. It put on a powdered wig and called itself a democracy. And then something happened that the system did not see coming, not because it was not paying attention, but because it had underestimated how far Black America had advanced since 1964. On election night 2008, a sleeping giant woke up from the midst of a nightmare and panicked at the sight of a black man living in the White House as president. And before the first term of the 2008 election had finished, the most organized white nationalist backlash in modern American history had already begun germinating in the dark. That panic had a name, Project 2025, and it produced the current situation. And while that backlash was germinating, the wound continued to fester. The wealth gap between black and white families did not close during those 8 years. The mass incarceration rate barely moved. Trayvon Martin was killed while a black man sat in the Oval Office. The algorithmic discrimination expanded. The surveillance infrastructure grew more sophisticated. The redlining gap in home ownership persisted. Are you seeing this? A black president did not change the architecture. It revealed how deeply the architecture was embedded because the system could not tolerate even the appearance of the last being first again without spending everything it had to whiten the stain. You see clearly now why it starts at the sanctuary, don't you? That is the sanctuary in its American form. The church signed the bulls, the nation signed the Constitution, and when a black man reached the highest office the Constitution created, the sanctuary revealed itself. It completely removed its mask, not with a papal bull, not with a slave code, but with a project that contained a coordinated institutional response to dismantle every protection that had been built since 1964. They ditched the uniform and went scorched earth. But here is what the sanctuary forgot. Every transaction it conducted, every bull it signed, every ship it blessed, every constitution it sanctified, every backlash it organized, was conducted in plain sight of the one who kept the record, the one who itemized every receipt, the one who heard every refrain. And the Book of Enoch, written 2,000 years before Project 2025, was a gleam in anyone's eye. Already described this moment, the sanctuary that was being watched. Either forgot, didn't care, or both. They forgot to care, and the Book of Enoch does not leave that observation without a response. The watchers, who transferred the knowledge and who taught the kings of the earth what they had no business knowing, are in the record. The institutions that ran the knowledge forward for 6 centuries are in the record. The sanctuaries that forgot to care are in the record. 1 Enoch chapter 9. The angels came before the Most High, and they said, "The earth cries out, and the sound of their crying has ascended to the gates of heaven." Are you hearing this? The cry was heard then. It's still being heard now. And that is why the apology landed on May 25, 2026. Not because the Vatican decided it was time. They were way beyond overdue. At some point, someone had to take the blinders off and state the obvious. How long can one institution pretend to care about everything else? But that, it's because the one who is watching knows what time it is and is clearing his throat. The sanctuary heard it first, because that is exactly where Ezekiel chapter 9 said he would start talking. Think of it. When babies are born, the first thing they do to let us know they are alive is the sound of their cry. And when they cry, we pay close attention because it's the only language they know to speak. But when a mother and a father cries over what's been done to their children, it's because they are at a loss for words. And it too is the only thing that lets us know they are still alive. For over 400 years, the covenant people have also been at a loss for words, but the accumulation of their crying resonates now at heaven's gates, and the God who will wipe away all tears from their eyes is listening. What once was only tears of sorrow will one day soon be tears of unspeakable joy. Stop and pause here for a moment. Can you imagine what that kind of unique joy may look like? And now that you know, it is not a distant hope sitting somewhere on the other side of an uncertain future. It is a covenant promise precise enough to honor every tear that has ever fallen to the ground from the eyes of his people. That accumulation of grief and sorrow does not stay buried. It resurrects into the great substance of what is coming. Can you wrap your head around this yet? Is doubt preventing you from grasping it fully? If so, no worries, it's okay. But know this one thing. You are the reason great substance is coming. And the one who walked through the pieces alone, who put this whole thing on himself, has never failed to deliver. Ever. Now we have to keep it real and ask ourselves a question. Was it just a coincidence that the Pope apologized the other day? Was it simply a random event? Or was it the result of a sign that gave us notice about what comes next? The sky has held the timeline since the beginning. Is it, or is it not, about time we learn how to read what it's been saying all along?